So you may get a pop-up on your screen that says you have to accept that we are recording. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to our MACAE membership check-in for the month of January 2023. Can you believe it? We're already into the new year. It's almost February. It's basically Christmas again. No, I'm kidding. Welcome, everybody. I hope you had a wonderful holiday, restful with family if you got some time away. Even if you worked, hopefully it was a little quiet. You got some work done that you needed to. And just want to wish everyone a happy new year. And I hope that the year is off to a great start for you. If you want to go ahead and say hello in the chat, you may do that. We are recording today's session so that you can get the links and the information. We'll send that out to you. And welcome to January. Before we begin, is there any one that is new? This is their first time on the MACAE membership check-in. And if so, if this is your first check-in, would you like to unmute and say hello if this is your first time?
Hi, good morning. Candace Woods with Southwest Economic Solutions in Detroit.
Welcome, Candace. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you, Candace. We're glad to have you. We hope that you get a lot of useful information out of today. So as we do with all of our check-ins, we've got a whole list of important things to share with you and topical priorities that are really important in our space of adult alternative community education and integrated education and training. The first and foremost, I'd like to take a moment to thank our board of directors. It's Education Board Recognition Month, School Board Recognition Month. So if you're in a local school district or work within a community, be sure to thank those members that you know within your area that serve on an educational board. But I'd really like to just give a shout out to our board of directors. They're all volunteers. They all work in the field and they give so much of their time to MACAE, and they really are kind of that additional employee that's unpaid within our association. They go above and beyond with their volunteer hours and their time. So if you know any of these lovely faces on the screen, be sure to shoot them a message or an email and thank them for their support of the association and their thanks. Like I said, if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be able to do half of the things that we do. So thank you to those board, and thank you to our ex officio partners, Ryan Hunt at the Michigan Works Association, Peter Rourke at the League for Public Policy, Melissa Smith at the Alternative Education Organization, Matt Gillard at Michigan's Children, Jeff McNeil from the Department of Education, and David Dirks from the Department of Correction. So thank you all so much for the work that you do each and every day to support MACAE. Thank you to our wonderful, wonderful board. Also, I'd like to start with kind of what I think is an inspirational video as we come into a new year and a new time. I just think it's always important to kind of set ourselves for the space ahead and what is to come and the challenges that are there, but also the opportunities that lie there. It's kind of a nice little reset. We can't redo it all. Sometimes it looks very similar to what it looks last year, but sometimes it's just nice to reframe our minds and reset. And I really like this video and wanted to share this with you all. So I'm going to transition to that. And as I start the video, as always, if you can just put in the chat that you can hear it. Nothing like starting a video and having no one be able to hear it. So we'll go ahead and watch the video.
I have a lot of memories from when I was a child. One that's always stuck out to me, though, was when I was about 10 years old and I was in school and I struggled. And I didn't struggle with English, math, or science. I struggled holding still. And I would try to listen and focus and process ideas, but I couldn't help myself. And to be honest, I would sit there and then I would just start tapping. And the students in the class would look at me and they'd say, "Hey, stop tapping." A lot of the time, I didn't even realize I was doing it. And then eventually even the teachers got after me and they would yell at me and they'd say, "Clint, you have to stop tapping." It got so bad that I got sent to the principal's office for tapping. And he said to me, "Okay, maybe when you go back to class, just try sitting on your hands." And so I did. I went back to class, and when I felt myself starting to tap, I did this. I sat on my hands. And that worked for about 5 seconds. One time I was tapping in class and my teacher, Mr. Jensen, he looked at me and he yelled. And he said, "Clint, stay after class." And I thought to myself, this is it. I am done. Now, I've always been the type of person that believes that a single moment in time can change a person's life. And this was one of those moments for me. And I will never forget it. And so I was sitting there with Mr. Jensen and an empty classroom. And he walked past me and he sat next to his desk and he said, "Clint, come here. I want to talk to you." And as he looked me right in the eye, he said, "Now, I need you to know something. You're not in trouble. But I do have just one question that I have to ask you." And he asked, he said, "Have you ever thought about playing the drums?" And in that moment, Mr. Jensen, he leaned back and he opened the top drawer of his desk. And he reached in and he pulled out my very first pair of drumsticks. And he held them in his hands and he looked at me and he said, "Hey, Clint, you're not a problem. I think you're a drummer." From that moment on, I've never put those sticks down. I've toured, recorded, and played drums all over the world. My whole college education was paid for with drumsticks in my hand. Just because of a single moment in time when somebody believed in me. And he saw something in me that I didn't even see within myself. And from that moment, I learned that there's a difference between being the best in the world and being the best for the world.
So I like that one, and I see a lot of great comments in the chat about that, and I think that's a great video, and so we'll be sure to share out that link with everyone, and it's just a really great motivational thing as we start the new year, and really something to think about is that we don't always have to be the best in the world, but for the world. And in the world that we're in and the space that we're in, we can really make a difference. And it's just a good reminder. Sometimes the mountain of lists of things seems so long. I've got my whole list right here of things to do this week and this today and this month. But sometimes just those one or two key things can make all the difference for ourselves and for other people. So keep that in mind this month. And as you go ahead, is that you can make a difference and you are making a difference. And sometimes it just starts in those really small ways, and just kind of think back and remember those things. Someone who's making a difference in our community and our space is Gigi Salka, and she is the latest interviewee, if you will, the latest person highlighted in our MACAE profile series. We have a new episode just dropped this week. It's available on our YouTube page, MACAE Professional Development. It's also available on our social media pages. So go ahead and check out Gigi's profile. We had a great conversation talking about how she got into this space and this work and her background, and what she's kind of looking forward to for her program in the year ahead. So we've got a series of interviews coming up with more partners. If that's something that you're interested in, this was, like I said, a project that we launched this last fall. And it's really been kind of an exciting opportunity to get to know so many people that we work with on a daily basis a little bit more intimately, and to get to know, about their experiences and really share out the power of us as a network. So I'm always looking for candidates to be interviewed. And so if that's something that you're interested in, please reach out. And I was so happy to interview Gigi and to have that as an opportunity. So check her video out on our YouTube page and our social media pages as well. All right, and now is the time. If there's anything that anyone has as we come into this new year, exciting announcements, new program opportunities, if you're doing some fun events within your local program, we'd invite you to unmute and you can share those, or if you can't unmute, you can certainly share them into the chat. But does anyone have anything coming up in the next month or so that you'd like to share out for the good of the group? No one's got anything exciting happening. I'll let you think about it for couple more seconds longer. Any new staff that have come on? Any new projects that are upcoming that you'd like to share out?
Patrick, this is Tina from Tuscola.
Hi, Tina. Great to hear you.
Sorry, I'm driving, so hopefully there's not too much background noise.
No. Be safe. Be safe.
I am. We are having a grand opening. We were fortunate enough to be able to create a dedicated adult education room in Tuscola. We had previously been sharing with a daytime program, so now we're able to do some daytime projects and things, and we're doing a ribbon cutting and open house type of event here next week. And I've invited local businesses as well and kind of sent them a letter about the advantages of hiring folks who are getting their GEDs, but also getting the, if they have individuals that haven't pursued adult education, the benefits of offering that as an employer. So we're working on that, and the local chamber will be there. Our local foundation, who also works with our community education and has provided us with some EMT equipment to have EMT classes. So we're hoping for a decent turnout. You know how those things go, but it's really to get that word out to the community again. We've really been working on that, and it's worked this year. We are constantly getting calls, and that is pretty unique in this rural area. So it's kind of an exciting, busy, crazy time, but we're loving it.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing. What a great achievement for you guys. Well, that's awesome. Well done. Well done. And send me the information. If it fits into my schedule, maybe I can pop out there. That would be fantastic. Congratulations.
Will do. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'll go. Our family literacy program at the Literacy Center of West Michigan in Grand Rapids. We just got a 3-year grant from Corewell Health to do health literacy classes for language learning parents in healthcare settings, to do classes kind of specifically focused on language and culture around healthcare. So it's exciting.
Wonderful, Bree. That's amazing. Congratulations. You guys are just getting grants left and right. That's great. Great expansion opportunities there. Wonderful. Any other announcements?
I have something to share. This is Carol from
Hi,
Troy.
Carol.
Hello. So we have a new venture in Troy Continuing Ed. We are adding a special ESL class this semester. We're working in collaboration with Samaritas. So Samaritas will send us clients, and this will be one mixed level in-person class. It will meet Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so it will be ESL. It's just a little different from what we usually do, to where we're going to try a couple of new things. We get clients from Samaritas, and instead of registration 2 or 3 times a year, we're going to try an ongoing situation. So we'll start that. I think that we are going to start with our first registration for this class tomorrow. And I hear that we have 12 students that will come to us.
That's fantastic. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Carol.
Okay.
It's so great to hear all these updates from, different parts of the association. And I think also, Carol, to that point, reaching out to different partners, right? That maybe not typically maybe be on our radar, or thinking about things, doing it in a slightly different way. You've been partnering, but let's kind of push the envelope even more. That's really fantastic. And I so appreciate the updates. It looks also like Pam Gosla put an update into the chat that they have a new director coming on, coordinator Chad Gibbs, at their adult education program at the Michigan Works Southeast, and he'll be getting assuming that role. And then she uses the word that she will be easing out, and I don't even want to say those words, because Pam Gosla has been a force in adult and integrated workforce. So we still got some weeks to come with you, Pam, for sure. But welcome to Chad and all the work that he's going to do ahead in this exciting space too. So thank you for that update, Pam. Any other updates? Robin put in the chat that Kalamazoo Adult Education is beginning a new partnership with Telemon. Robin, are you in a place that you want to share, unmute and share anything?
Well, we had our, so I've been meeting with them with Michigan Works, the collaborative meetings that we have, once a month, to talk about what opportunities are available for advanced training and support for different students, or adults in advanced training. And Telemon was there, and I talked to them about, some of our students, and they said that the support that they do for migrant farm workers, a lot of our students that are descendants or their parents were migrant farm workers, or the job that they're doing now, if they're directly handling the food product or the meat product, then they are actually considered the farm, they're part of that farm worker. And Telemon has different supports that will help them with training and getting other things that they need in place. So
Great.
they're coming today to tour our facility and talk to some of our students.
That's great. New year, new opportunities. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Robin. Any other updates? Well, thank you all for sharing that. I love hearing those updates, and we'll circle back certainly on many of those projects and see where they are 3, 6, 9 months, a year from now. And then I will just say, we're always looking for fall conference sessions. So if you get to a place where you think, it's working and we like to share out with people as well, that's the old MACAE hook, is to get you to present at a conference for sure. So thank you all for sharing those things. A few updates in each of our different areas of the association. Quite a few updates, actually. Part of me thought that with the holidays, things would be just a little bit quieter, but kind of some new releases, some rehashing of a couple of things that are priorities. But I first wanted to start with the community education and before and after school programming space. There are kind of 3 important updates or informational pieces that I wanted to share. The first is that there is a webinar. It's actually today. And so for our community education folks, I'm going to try to prioritize sending that link out. But it's a webinar on supporting the health of children experiencing homelessness. And so I know that that's an important piece that all of us as professionals are asked to sometimes be in the space of providing insight or support or directing families to services. And so I just thought that could be an important place to just garner some information. And it's not always something that we see every day, but it's something that, we do encounter in our programming and our experiences. And so there's a link to a webinar there this afternoon. The second, I think, is important. This has been a conversation in community education program modeling for a very long time. But there is a grant opportunity for the 21st Century Learning Program models. There is an informational application webinar scheduled for February 2nd. And then if you choose to move forward with applying for the grant, there is an intent deadline for February 23rd. And those programs would really be at an LEA, which would be at a school district or an ISD, or in conjunction with multiple districts, to really provide 21st century learning opportunities before and after school enrichment programming in a really school-based environment, and really supporting the K-12 environment. Oftentimes it's high-performing students, but also low-performing students within the K-12 system, families and children that we're supporting. So if that's something that you think you might be interested in, I'm happy to have a conversation about, or if there's something that within that you think could be very valuable for your district, I would encourage you to also attend the application webinar informational session on February 2nd. So the deadline is approaching, but you still have a little bit of time to read up about it. I've included the link there. And once again, all of the links and information from today's webinar and information here will be shared with you. The last is that the U.S. Department of Education has started to relaunch its early learning newsletter. They have one for this month of January 2023. Some of the information is really geared towards toddlers and infants. So I want to just put that caveat out there, but there is a lot of information in there linked to school age or before school age children, preparing them for school, even school age children in K-8, and some additional learning resources, math manipulative enrichment programming resources. And so I just felt like that would be a good space to put that link there and to have you look at that. And like I said, there is a lot of toddler and infants, and if you look through it, you'll see that first. So you'll think, Patrick, why are you sending this? But if you kind of dig down deeper a little bit, you'll be able to see some more relevant information for those of you in that space. So wanted to share those all three important updates with you all. And if you have any questions, Brian Puffer is the guy to go to as well. He's our community education director at Saline and the chair of our community education committee. And he's a great guy and has a lot of great resources as well. Any comments, questions, concerns about the before and after school landscape? All right. Well, moving on to some of our alternative and youth populations, a couple of, I would say, random but important announcements or kind of reminders. Random meaning that they're from all different facets, right? From policy to programming to implementation. The first is kind of just a general reminder for all educational staff that have a teaching certificate, is that the renewal for teaching certificates obviously is every June 30th is when you have to verify if you have those credits. So this may be your cycle if you have a standard or provisional teaching certificate or educator certificate, administrator certificate. So I've included here the annual certification and renewal requirements. I had to renew mine last year, so now I don't have to do it for several years. But just a reminder that that's something that you will want to look at, especially if you need continuing education hours and you need to meet those credit verifications. You want to make sure that you're on top of that and are maintaining that and are aware of that. And then if you are in a place that you have to renew your certificate, and it would be on June 30th, the time from now until June 30th, that it's now open for you to complete that renewal process. So that's just an important reminder every year, every summer, regardless of where things are at. There's always a few folks that are trying to figure out and get those additional education hours and get those certification renewal requirements under task. So make sure that you are aware of that if you have a certificate in the state of Michigan, an educator certificate, and that you are on top of that. The second may not necessarily impact our youth and alternative programs directly, but it's something that I think as staff, if you work in those areas, and even if you work in adult and community education as well, that you really should be aware of. Districts have been awarded through the state budget this year an opportunity to apply for Grow Your Own Talent educator funding. And that would include creating cohorts at the middle and high school level to really create a pipeline to get more students, more youth on a trajectory to go into an education track, whether to be a teacher or an administrator. Obviously, there's a major shortage, not only in our state, but nationwide in educator shortages. We're on that side of the pendulum where, 10 years ago, we had too many and now we don't have enough. And so this has been a new initiative that the governor proposed, that the legislator agreed to really kind of recruit more people in the long term into the field. And so your district or your local ISDs may be creating these pipelines and may be creating these opportunities. And as they're doing these things, adult and alternative education are included as spaces where you can do your student teaching in those areas. And so you may find that along the way, you're approached by individuals that are interested in working in your programs, by different program, or even your local district or ISD that are interested about placing possible folks in for observational hours, things of that nature. So it's a lot of that work is going to be launching this spring, and those applications are now being reviewed and kind of going through tweaks. But I think it's important that we're aware of that and we know about those opportunities that are there to really increase the number of educators in the field. The third bullet would really be important for those of our members that are in Northern Michigan. There's a nonprofit called NMORC, and many of you might be familiar with that within Northern Michigan, but they have created a naloxone school safety kit program. So essentially to really share information about the opioid epidemic, especially in youth, and to really provide safety kits for, there's a short certification process that you could go through or that teams themselves could go through and be able to receive a naloxone school kit that you could have available in the event that there is an overdose at your facility or with a youth, especially in the Northern Michigan. I think it covers 15 or 25 counties. I'm forgetting exactly the exact number of counties, but I've included the information there. If you'd like more information, please reach out to those researchers and those people that are putting that together. And if you would like more, there's more detailed information from the Department of Education about the specific program. If you'd like the more detailed verbiage, I can send that to you as well. But that I know is a important topic, and it's something that is unfortunately very troubling for a lot of our youth. And so I think it's just another resource that unfortunately we need to be aware of, but I'm glad that there are people that are dedicated to working on that and to making sure that there's resources in that space for sure. The fourth
Patrick.
is, yeah. Hey.
Oh, I was just going to
ahead.
say, Dr. McGraham is amazing. I've been to some of his presentations with the IASCO Drug-Free Coalition. So if anybody could have him present even to their students, he's a doctor. He felt like he was part of the opioid epidemic, and now he feels like he needs to be part of the solution. He's just a great man, very dedicated, somebody that people should reach out to.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that, Whitney. And
Mhm.
do you guys have a school safety kit? I don't know. I thought of you all if you already had this information.
Yeah, I work closely with them. Our Catholic Human Services, we work with them a lot too for our adult ed programs. They've done training for all of my teachers and provided the naloxone kits that we keep locked up in all of our sites. And then all of our alternative ed teachers have been trained as well.
Great.
So yeah, we do. And then they're trying to get into the local high schools at this point, which there's a little pushback, but
yeah,
we're all working together.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I wrote that down as, again, always looking for conference presentations ideas. So thank you for sharing that. There's also I know many of us are school counselors or act in lieu of a school counselor because our programs don't necessarily have the funding maybe to have a verified or certified school counselor. But there's an upcoming webinar with the School Counselors Association on as a professional. It really is geared toward a school counselor, but I think when I was looking at the information, you could still attend if you weren't a school counselor certified. But really our power and our impact on mental health. And it's an important thing as we talk about youth, adults, even ourselves as professionals. But I think that this would be a very interesting thing to listen into, to kind of recenter, refresh our toolkit, if you will, for the winter ahead. We're going into a time, I mean, we've only seen 15 minutes of sunshine in the state or whatever since January. And so we're kind of going into that seasonal affective disorder time. We're going into a time where it's just winter, it's a little bleak. And so this might be something to just make sure that we're refreshed and have the tools necessary if we encounter those circumstances or individuals who may need our assistance. And again, many of us are working in that space where we do a little bit of it all. And so if you're a school counselor or you have school counselors, I'd encourage them to go to that. Or if you yourself would like to, it's about an hour and a half webinar presentation, and I've included the link there. And then the last thing I'll share, and this comes up periodically, both from adult and alternative education programming, is I've included the link. The department has made just some minor tweaks to the school data records management resource. It's a lengthy document. I can click here and show it to you. It's a lengthy document, but essentially it covers all public records if you are a publicly funded institution within the state. And then it tells you how long that you need to keep or retain those documents. And so I know that comes up periodically for educational records, CA-60s, educational files and things like that. Sometimes also we just find other random documents that come into our programs that we don't really know what to do with about. Financial record keeping as well is in there. So I just thought that that could be a valuable resource again for everyone to take a look at that and to really just be reminded of that and have the latest and greatest information. All right. Any questions about the alternative or youth populations updates? Great. All right, transitioning now into adult education and integrated education and training. It's kind of 3 updates that I wanted to share with you. The first is that I, as well as a couple of other members of the MACAE board, participated in the U.S. Chamber of Commerce 2022 Talent Forward virtual webinars conference. It was released through COABE, so perhaps you also participated as well. But it's a multi-hour, it's about a half-day conference. It was free, it was provided by the Chamber, but they had a particular section. It was very interesting. It talked about economic trends. It talked about what major employers are looking for in workforce preparation and adult education resources. But it also talked a little bit about what are the skills, particularly for those learners that are on an employment track. And those, as we look to retool and retain existing workers in the landscape that maybe are transitioning as advanced manufacturing comes in and need to be retooled or retrained, or even those of our adult learners that are transitioning into the employment space or into new employment spaces based on the fact that they've gained their credential. So there is a section towards the end, I think it's about maybe an hour and 40 minutes or 2 hours into the session where there's more of a specific roundtable discussion about adult learners in this space and how we can utilize different data tools to help fill and kind of source those adult learners into job placement. So that link is there. I'd encourage you just to have it listen if you're working on something today and would like to have it on the background. I think that's always a good, important thing just to kind of keep the pulse on the national news as well as our state news around talent. The second, something that I think is also important is that CASAs, many of us use CASAs for our national assessment tool, paper pencil, online, but they have created a more streamlined or kind of user-friendly checklist for implementation. And this would be implementation for the paper test as well as the e-tests if that's something that you're moving into that space and want to start implementing those e-tests. So I know that sometimes we get lots of questions about how do I start this process? What do we do? The first step is obviously going through the initial certification, checking that your site is, valid, checking that you have the right materials or resources that you need to purchase. They have a checklist, they have a training because there are different roles between a proctor as well as an administrator of the testing site. And so they've tried to kind of condense this information into a separate kind of web launching page from their website. So I will put that link is in the PowerPoint embedded already, but we might send it out separately as well. I know this is a time when we have different staff transitioning on. They also do have a refresher series. So if you've been in CASAS for a long time, I remember I got certified in e-tests back when there was a dongle, the little flash drive that if you lost all of your seats because all your seats were on one flash drive. So periodically I've gone back through and got recertified and just refreshed as well, because it does change. There are tweaks and a lot of that information as well. So wanted to share that with you. It just launched this January. There was a webinar towards the end of December where they kind of walked through a couple of state level administrator folks And I think they'll continue to do some webinars specifically about the new website itself. But from the looks of it, you're looking at it right now, it looks kind of clean and concise. So, and then when you get this PowerPoint, you click right onto these links and they'll open up into the links. And we'll just put a reminder as well in there about that. So when you get the PowerPoint, it's a PDF version, you'll open it and you can click right on the links and go to the links themselves. The last thing is that at the end of 2022, I think it was the 14th of December, we had a joint meeting between MACAE leadership, the Michigan Works Association leadership, and the leadership within the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity. And that was something that MACAE had been requesting for several months. And part of that effort was to say that we need to ensure that we're having conversations because we are serving the same populations. And we need to make sure that we're supporting the providers in that space to be able to do what they do best and provide those services. So it was really, I will say, an introductory meeting. The intent is to have that continue to be quarterly. We talked a lot about the advocacy component and the roles that both associations, MACAE as well as the Michigan Works Association, have within this space. We talked about our shared goals, and actually the Department of LEO outlined some specific priority goals for 2023. I believe we sent those out in a prior MACAE Monday update, but I will happy to resend that if you'd like to look at that. But some specific numerical numbers of what they would like to see in terms of learners that are completing their high school diploma or equivalency, the number of clients that are transitioning into gainful employment or increasing wages. And that was important for us as associations that are working on the adult ed side and the workforce development side to really understand our role in that space. And my hope is that these leadership meetings will continue to be a space where we can express what opportunities and gaps that we're filling in already at a local or regional level and how we can maximize that statewide, but also the challenges that we have. And one of those things that we brought up that came up was around funding. And how does that work? How do we streamline? How can that be braided? Not only on the adult education side, but on the Michigan Works workforce development side. And so I think overall, it was a productive meeting to say, that we have work ahead for us. The other thing that came out of it was talking about the WIOA eligible client and what that means for our state in workforce and adult education, and how do we serve individuals who maybe are not WIOA eligible? How do we continue to serve them if they are WIOA eligible? And what does that mean in terms of if we are referring clients between our systems, if they're going to the Michigan Rehabilitative Services, if they're going to adult education, if they're going to Michigan Works, if they're going to the Bureau of Services for Blind Persons. So big high level kind of 30,000, but my hope is that these meetings will bring out maybe some more directed policy that really do help make our jobs and our delivery of service a little more attainable and a little more streamlined in our efforts. And if we're given this space, then we're going to continue to take that space and to talk and discuss that. Any questions or comments about the adult education and training space updates? All right. Well, the last thing that I wanted to share with everyone was kind of an update of where we are with our legislative priorities that we released in December for the 2023-2024, I know we're thinking ahead, budget year cycle. So we shared this previously, but state and federal investments for the budget year the budget year runs October 1st through September 30th. And so about a year before the next budget is implemented is when those conversations with key policymakers begin. And all of us, regardless if we're an administrator, a teacher, a navigator, a support staff, even a volunteer, we have a space to be an advocate for the programs that we're in and for some of the investments that we'd like to see. And sometimes I think that we feel removed from the advocacy because we don't know where to start, we don't know what to say, we don't know how to engage, but we really have a space and a role. And if we can't do this and we're not going to do it, somebody else will, and they will not be able to articulate the needs of our families, our youth, our adults that we're working with. So we have to be dialed into this space, especially in this new year. And a couple of reasons why are that the legislature, there are a large number of new legislators in the state and state Senate and the state House of Representatives. The federal thing is going to do its thing. We saw a little bit of chaos already with electing a speaker and trying to just come up with the rules. So the federal is kind of going to do their thing. But really the name of the game for 2023 is our state. Understanding who our state elected officials are at the House and the Senate level, because that's where we're going to maybe see some further investments in some of the programming that we care about. Just last week, there was a annual conference to resolve budget issues and to look at projections for the future. And right now there's a 9 billion with a B fund equity within our state budget. So there's resources available out there that we feel that are able to be managed and maintained and really should be invested in the core areas that MACAE represents. The community programming, the adult education programming, alternative education resources, both from a policy perspective, but also from a funding, program expansion, and capacity building. So we have packaged our legislative priorities as taught, trained, and tooled in Michigan. Regardless of where you're at on the spectrum of our association, we think that you fall into one of those areas. And we think that our learners, our families that we represent are falling and coming into a MACAE program, member program for one of those things, right? They're going to be taught a skill, whether they're a child or whether they're an adult or a youth. They're going to be trained and given certification in something, and they're going to be equipped with the employability or soft skills to go forward and to navigate the challenges that life may have ahead. So I want to kind of just give a brief overview of the components before we leave, and to share with you, I've gotten a lot of questions about how do we go through this process and come up with these things. So this is, I want to say, not just something that MACAE does by sitting around the table and just throwing things out. This is a well thought out process that really takes multiple months. I mean, if you think about this, we've had this conversation really started probably as soon as 2020. And these priority investment areas have been important to us ever since then. And we've kind of had to reframe them and retool them and re-examine them with who we are talking with and looking at. So we've included feedback from all of you as members over these last couple of months and really years, I'll say, our statewide partners about what are their priorities, and also looking at the direction of the executive office of the governor and the legislature. What are they focused on? What are their priority areas that they see, and how can we plug into that? The other thing that's been really, really important for a lot of new investment areas is allocating funds on a award basis where everybody gets some, but there's also a competitive component to it. I think that's not uncommon. I know that we'd like to see kind of everyone just get a share, but it's very important that we have those two components, because when we're analyzing kind of growth going forward, there has to be a measurable component or a measurable tool in place. And as we've talked with policymakers, they really feel that that's important. If I'm going to give you this, I need to see this in return so that we can continue to bolster all of the work that we're doing and really evaluate how its effectiveness. Sometimes that's not always easy to do, and I want to acknowledge that here, but I think we can continue to work and provide that together. The other thing is that our legislative priorities really are building the system for all of you as members and for the existing current providers, especially if you're in adult education and literacy. Our priority is to ensure that you have the resources and tools that you have and that you need in order to continue the work that you have going forward. And then we can talk about expanding the system to other providers in other areas and looking at where, but we really feel like we have to make sure that our existing members and our existing providers have the capacity for program building. And then the other thing that we cannot do is not have a measurable outcome for success. So we have really articulated that each one of our legislative investments will have a measurable outcome for the state. And that measurable outcome is not meant to create barriers or roadblocks for us as providers, but is really meant to set a goalpost to say, this is our contribution to the state, whether that's through increasing the number of individuals that are going on to learning, whether that's increasing parental involvement in the children's well-being and their child's education, whether that's increasing family literacy access, whether that's getting more people into the workforce, whether that's helping people to increase their wages, that they're investing in our state economy. We've had to create some outcomes because, once again, going back to that first bullet point, feedback has been, we need to see what some of these measurable outcomes are. And we know that with this population in particular, we can think more creatively about what some of those outcomes are. So I wanted to just lay that groundwork for you, is that this is a well thought out process over time. And then the last piece is that historically, adult education in particular in Michigan has not been, we've not always advocated for the nonprofit literacy space. And this time around, it's important that we're saying the nonprofit literacy sector, it needs its own resources as well to maintain and grow and expand programming. We want to continue to articulate that in the public school setting, but we also have WIOA only funded providers in the nonprofit sphere that need support and resources, and we want to elevate them and to make sure that they have the resources that they need. So I apologize for monopolizing that slide, but I just think that that's important that we understand that. And our role as MACAE members is to be very understanding of what these priorities are and to know where our role is and what the benefits are for our local community. So over the next few weeks, we'll be sharing with you what this looks like. This is a high-level overview of different targeted legislative priorities over the next few weeks and months that we've already been hounding and talking with legislative partners in the governor's office about it, but we'll continue to. And this is where we're going to need your support. So each one of these has specific provisions for investing. There are specific investments for adult education, publicly funded programs. There's additional investment areas for nonprofit literacy programs. There are additional investment areas for community education programs. And so if ever there was a time to rally the troops, this would be the time. And so over the next few weeks, as we ask for your input, we ask for you to sign on to a letter or those kinds of things. I really would ask you to be engaged with us. And if you see that, it's not just the director in your program that's signing on, it's all of your teachers, it's all of your staff, because we all are part of this and we need to articulate our professional experience in those things. So without going into all of these components today as in-depthly as they need to be, I'd like to invite all of our members, and we'll send this out, but you can save the date. Wednesday, February 1st would be the normal time for our next check-in. And so we'd like to reserve that time as really an advocacy legislative priorities update. It'll be a virtual webinar. We'll go through each one of these components and talk about them. We'll talk about how we came to that. We'll talk about what that means. We'll talk about what you can do at a program level with those funds. And we really think that's important that you as members understand what we're asking for, so that when you are asked those questions by your policymakers or within your local communities, you can understand what it's going to do for you and for your program, so that Belding knows what's happening, that Zeeland knows what's happening, that North Menominee knows what's going on, that Lapeer knows what's going on. So please save that day on your calendar. It will be recorded. We can share that information out later, but I think it's important that all of us have a little piece of this and understand what exactly that we're asking for. And if there was another word that I would say to sum up all of this, is that these investments are trying to capture what it takes to build capacity and strengthen our capacity as program providers in all of these different areas, but also what it means to expand and to really be responsive to the needs of our communities. And so those are the two things: capacity and expansion. If you trying to get it down to two words of what we're asking for, we're trying to build capacity, and we're trying to increase expansion of our existing programming so that we can do more and have a larger footprint and make a larger difference in communities. So this is really important that you're in tune with this, that you're aware of these things. I'm happy to talk through these priorities as well. But the last thing that I'll just share is we also have new leadership within our state legislature. And whether you're in adult, alternative, community ed, or even in integrated education training workforce, it's important that we know who these key players are. So for the first time in 40 years, the Democratic Party has taken the House and the Senate within Michigan. If you've been watching the news, that may change in about a year's time. A couple of Democratic leaders are expected to possibly run for a couple of other offices at the local level that they've been eyeing for a long time, and that could throw a little bit of chaos into all of that. But for the first time in 40 years, we have Democrats leading the governor's office, the House, and the Senate. This is significant, right? We haven't had that in state government in 40 years for that party. And so part of it will be to see what that caucus decides to prioritize. We think that the priorities that MACAE has articulated really are important for the entire state, whether you're Republican or Democrat, but are also in line with the Democratic caucus as they come into power. The challenge is that sometimes you fight more strongly within your own family than you do with your friends or your enemies. And so we know that as a Democratic caucus, this is their first time in 40 years they've had the power. And so it'll be interesting to see what they prioritize as they go forward as being of importance and what they want to continue to work on. So I'm sharing this information with you so that you can start to reach out and be aware within your own local areas. This is a list of the state Senate leadership. The majority is where the Democrats are, the minority is where the Republicans are. But all of those denoted in orange or bold are MACAE. They have a MACAE member program within that district. So 80% of the leadership. So we have a voice here, and we have in a really significant space where we can move the needle. The next thing is the state House leadership. Once again, even more, I would say, where we have direct programs, whether you're community ed, alternative ed, Michigan Works Agency, adult education program, those in orange, those bolded, have a program in their elected district. So we have a significant opportunity to be in contact with these individuals and to talk with them and to raise up awareness about what we're asking for, what we do, and what we'd like to see going forward. So this will be sent out, and I would just encourage you, this is just the leadership. Obviously, there's more representatives that are not in leadership, but this is the leadership. And if we have this many that we can identify as within the leadership that we have programs in, that's important that we are aware of that. So some reminders for you. The first thing that I would ask you all to do as members, as responsible citizens, is identify who your new state policy maker is. Districts have changed. Perhaps you know them, perhaps they're new. I've included a link here where you can find your representative or your senator for the state. I would ask everyone to do that. There's something simple and easy that you can do. When you go to their profile page, it talks a little bit about their priorities, what their work experience, their educational experience. Research them a little bit and read up on it. It takes several minutes, if that, 5-10 minutes. And then over the next few weeks and months, there are several things that you can do. You can call your legislature or send them an email and reintroduce yourself or your program. It's a new year. Hey, I just wanted to reach out to you, invite you to come and visit our program sometime, let you know about the wonderful work we're doing. Have a wonderful day and year, and I look forward to connecting with you soon. just like that, with the information, you can send something out. You could also share more, if you had more time, a success story. You could attend one of their coffee hours, or you obviously can join us for that webinar on February 1st, where we're going to talk about all of our priorities. The other thing is that in December, and we'll send it out again, we asked for sign-on letters from different organizations, superintendents, nonprofit executive directors, community agencies that would be in support of our MACAE priorities. We're working on that at a statewide level, but would ask you to do the same at the local level. And so that's something that you could do. And you could also invite a policymaker in the next 3 months to do a site visit. It's not complicated. It's not hard. There are people like us. And so these are things, tangible things that we can do. And if you need help with any of these things, please reach out. That's what we're here for, is to help guide and direct you all. So I've taken too much time on all of these things, as I tend to do. But I want to thank you all for a great month. Both the updates that we have, as well as these legislative priorities, are really important. On February 1st, we will have a discussion about those priorities more in depthly. Please mark your calendar if you're available. It will be recorded. And then our membership check-in was incorrectly. I do not intend to have a check-in on a Saturday. in the update this week, it said on Saturday. It'll be on Wednesday, February 15th at 9 a.m. So please mark your calendar for that. But a lot of information, a lot of new things coming this year. I thank you all for your time and for your efforts and for your energy. We will stay on just a few more minutes longer if you have an individual question, but I want to thank everyone for their time and for their efforts, and thank you for continuing to be advocates and MACAE members. We so appreciate your time, and it really does mean something to us. We are making a difference. So we will sign off for this month of January. We'll see you next month in February, and thank you all for attending today's membership check-in. And we'll stay on a few minutes longer if you have a specific question. Take care, everyone.
I made a